All right. Well, we are live. What's up, everybody? And I have to say, after seeing my guest's intro for his live streams, I'm like, damn, I need to step it up. But what's up? Oops, I just removed it. Didn't mean to do that. What's up, Zach?
Hi.
How's it going? Thank you so much for joining me. And by the way, it is going to be a short to our viewers. It is going to be a short stream. Oh, just a second. I was getting a little feedback from my YouTube. It is going to be a short stream just because I have an interview right after this in the Manson case, the Marilyn Manson situation, which is going to be a really big deal. No, it's not Marilyn Manson, but anyway, it's been scheduled for a bit, and so anyway, I'm sorry we can't have you on longer, but next time I want to have you on for like 2 hours because there's so much to dig into. But y'all, the main thing right now that we want to do, I want to get him a lot closer to 100,000 subscribers because you are so close. What are you at? Like 87, 88?
80, 85?
Okay. So 15, that should be no big deal. That should be just another like week or two of Blake Lively coverage,
Oh,
honestly.
I mean, it is always something.
But everybody who watches this or is going to watch this, I know that I have a lot of viewers who probably haven't subscribed to your show. So everybody do a nice thing. This is a situation where you subscribing actually can make a difference because he is so close. And by the way, he did this for me. He and several other content creators tried to help me publicize my channel, tried to help me get to 100K, which we did. So thank you so much for that. So this is Zack Peter. I put the link to his channel in the description, and my mods will be posting it, and I'll put it in the comments. And so I think what I want to do, I know people probably want us to jump into the filing. I, full disclosure, have not even looked at it. You said you covered it a bit on your show this morning. So I tell you what, while I bring up the filing, you want to just tell me a few things that you said on your show, like your basic impressions of some of this?
Yeah, so I at least went through the initial like intro and summary of her argument, which she's saying that she is entitled to some of the same protections that the New York Times is entitled to. Like she basically says that she has a bunch of privileges. There's the privilege of being protected for filing a harassment lawsuit, and then there's the privileges of allowing the New York Times to release it because they're protected as the press. That there's no smear campaign. That I mean, kind of the same old regurgitated arguments that there's no merit behind their allegations, and their allegations don't even make sense. I mean, their argument was kind of. I mean, there were a couple of moments in the summary where I was like, okay, that was a good line, but I don't think it like actually works. But like,
Mm-hmm.
that was a good effort. Like, it was a cute try. So my impression of all of these motion to dismiss and motion to stay discovery, I think that they're trying to delay. And I don't know why that is. They're trying to delay the discovery process, clearly. The deadline for depositions and the initial discovery, I think, is due August 5th, 14th. So it's very obvious that they just want to take as much time as they want. Like, I don't know if it's because Ryan Reynolds' company is about to go public. I don't know if it's because we
Is
have
it?
another
I
simple.
didn't know that.
Yeah, so that was just announced that MGMT is, I think, the
Mm,
MGMT is, I think, the
yeah.
name of it.
Yeah.
Um, and so they're about to they have a big sale that they're about to try to make with that one. And so we'll
They're
see
getting
what
all this
happens.
bad PR right now when he's trying to, I don't know, I've seen so many dramas, so many like TV shows and movies about what it's like when people are trying to seal the deal in some big business venture like
Yeah.
Succession or whatever, right? And I'm just imagining that he's trying to seal the deal for something and some big business venture, and meanwhile, like, he's one of the most hated people in the Western world now.
Yeah. And his motion to dismiss, I don't think helped that at all. If anything, I think that just made his reputation so much worse. But so I think Leslie Sloan, the New York Times, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, all of their motions to dismiss, and then I predict that Blake and Ryan, their next filing will be a motion to stay discovery. I think they're just trying to delay the process. And again, I don't know if it's because they want to not hurt Another Simple Favor when that airs, or if they want to not hurt this sale.
Mm.
Like, I don't know what their motivation could be, but for whatever reason, they are really trying to delay this process. And I don't know. I mean, I kind of seem like they're fighting so strong, so they probably are going to take this all the way to trial. But also, I don't like, if they have a strong case, I don't get why they aren't ready to just go into it now.
So my experience covering other stuff like this, since I have focused, my channel has been mostly focused on Me Too stuff and what I believe are Me Too hoaxes. So I've seen a lot of cases of litigation now. And I think that, first of all, it's the delay tactic is just a general legal tactic if you are involved in litigation that you do not want or like. And so Baldoni, he's suing them. And so obviously, like we've talked about this before a lot, Zach, right? That they didn't know what they were biting off, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, probably when they started this, and so they've
Yep.
now been sued. And so a lot of the time, lawyers will just throw up as many roadblocks as possible in the hopes that it will in some way tire the other person out, or it will buy them more time, or what have you. So I definitely think that there is something to that. And then they can't be looking forward to discovery because so many texts are going to come out. And somebody mentioned something to me the other day that I hadn't thought of. Ryan Reynolds is going to have access to a number of Blake's texts that are just going to come out, as a result of discovering through this process. And I think most of us would not love the idea, even if we're being totally faithful, not love the idea of our significant other basically having access to what we're saying about them behind their back, or when we're venting to girlfriends, or I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it can
Yeah.
be kind of sticky. And someone brought this up to me the other day, and I was like, I hadn't thought of that. Anyway. So
No, I agree. I mean, it's the discovery phase is going to be so messy. I mean, the text messages, like, and there are so many layers to it, right? There are all the correspondence that's going to come out, and then there's the depositions. And Brian Friedman is going to
oh
depose Taylor
yeah.
Swift, Bradley Cooper, Hugh Jackman, and they're going to come into this fighting tooth and nail, and they're going to be pissed at Blake and Ryan for dragging them into this, especially because now I know their publicity teams aren't going to be happy, because now anything that they say in this deposition, is going to end up leaking into the press, and people are going to pick it apart, and they're going to become the headline of the week, and it's going to be so bad. Like, the discovery process is good. Like, if people think that we've gotten into the juicy meat of the lawsuit already, wait until we get to discover. This is the next phase, right? This is phase 2, and it's only going to get worse. This is, the pre-battle before the bloodbath in the courtroom.
No, it's true. It's definitely true. And I saw this with Depp versus Heard, is that, and I understand Johnny Depp was a much bigger star, but this thing has taken much less time to really snowball in terms of being a big media story than even Depp versus Heard took. But I remember Depp versus Heard, the lead up to that, I was covering that for a year before the trial. And yeah, there was a lot going on, but when you get to the trial, when this thing finally comes to fruition, or even when you're getting discovery and things are coming out, like you're right, we did pour over every single text and like every like inflection of meaning, basically. And so this has got to be something that I don't think anyone's looking forward to. Probably Team Baldoni not looking forward to it either, except
Yeah.
they know it's gonna prove their case. But
Well, because there's also going to be stuff that, I mean, the reality is there's going to be stuff that's going to come out that's not going to be good for Baldoni and
right.
Melissa Nathan. And I mean, I already see people are digging into Jed Wallace right now and some of his prior clients. And like that, the reality is trials don't look good for anybody, And I mean, Johnny Depp
Good
also
point.
got dragged in a lot of
Oh
stuff
yeah.
that came out in the court case as well that didn't make him look good. And it's a messy, messy process for everyone involved. And I know none of them are looking forward to it. But my thing is, it's like, just run into the storm. Let's just get into the discovery process. Know
Yeah.
that like it's going to be ugly for at least another year until trial next March. But I mean, I really don't understand how and why they're still fighting this, Blake and Ryan. Like, I mean, I think if their motion to dismiss does get shot down, maybe that was like their last attempt. I mean, it's going to get shot down. The only party I can see getting dismissed is the New York Times, because they have the press privileges that, allow them to play these games. But we'll
Does
see.
Brian Friedman, I know you're not a lawyer, neither am I. Does Brian Friedman's argument about that and the Fair Reporting Act and everything, do you think that is legitimate, though, or potentially legitimate? The idea that since they were doing their own investigating, so to speak, it wasn't just reporting on the complaint, that then doesn't that takes away their immunity under that act. Have you seen people? He's talking about that, right?
Yeah. So to me, I think the bigger thing is going to come down to whether or not the judge is going to allow the metadata argument to come in and
Mm,
prove that they were working on this prior to, the publication of the CRD complaint with, the metadata that with the content, the media that was uploaded to their server. I think that's going to be really important if the judge allows that, because then that establishes a timeline well beyond the filing of the CRD complaint, or even, a reasonable amount of time to give Blake Lively the opportunity to file that complaint while also being, in contact with the New York Times. And then two, I think it's going to come down to the thousands of documents that they claim that they reviewed. The thousands of documents were not revealed in the CRD complaint. So I think timeline and then what those documents are is going to show that they went beyond the scope of what was in that legal filing. So therefore, they had to have done a deeper investigation into this case. So it can't be
right.
entirely protected by the CRD
Right.
complaint. And so we'll have to see. The subpoena, right? The subpoena for the text messages, that's going to get really, really tricky when we have to find out how was that subpoena issued? What case was
Mhm,
it related to? Is it real? So I
mhm.
think those are three key things that could keep the New York Times attached to this, but it really comes down to whether or not the judge is going to allow that to be used in this case.
It would definitely, and by the way, great analysis there. It would definitely be wonderful to see one of these big news institutions finally held to account because they have engaged in so much defamation. I mean, I've even experienced it, and I know that you have. Speaking of, whatever came of that Business Insider article? Because you and Donna were interviewed for that. Is it still in process or what's going on?
So me, Donna Bowling, Dave Neal, were all interviewed for that. We all kind of went into it knowing it was likely going to be a hit piece. We haven't heard anything. He's gone radio silent. I would imagine that the piece is probably not going to run after we saw the cut. We see the heat that Taylor Lorenz is getting. We see the Stephanie McNeil glamour hit piece on creators that kind of like it's just continued to blow up and snowball. So it's going to be. I don't think that piece is ever going to see the light of day. I think he's going to let that piece die and not take on the heat that could potentially come his way. And like not as a threat, but I just think,
No.
I know last time you were on my podcast, we did a panel and Ari Jacobs was on and Donna was on. So I do another panel with Donna and with Dave Neal, and we kind of get into this and we talk about this. And it airs on the podcast tomorrow, and it's gonna be a really interesting convo because we get into that and the nuances of it, and we don't see it eye to eye entirely.
Okay.
And there's a lot of discourse because Dave obviously just did an interview with Taylor Lorenz, and so that
Oh, that's
becomes
right. That's right. Okay.
yeah, and so that becomes a topic of discussion for the three of us, but it's interesting. We'll see. I just think now the press is really we're tried my best to explain it in that conversation with the two of them, which, like I said, airs tomorrow. But like, I try to explain that a lot of the heat isn't because people want to be angry at reporters for saying these things, just in defense of blind,
Right.
support for Baldoni. But it's more of like they're tired of being gaslit and told that the only reason they're supporting Baldoni is because they don't want to believe women. I feel like that's such an
Exactly.
invalidating argument.
Exactly. That is it. And we've seen it so much too. It's not just on this case. It goes all the way back to Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, and even before that. But as someone who covers these types of stories, and that's basically what I've been doing on my channel more or less for the past 4+ years, I do get tired, even though I try to shake it off or shrug it off or whatever, but I do get tired of the constant misrepresentation. And, when you see, Stephanie McNeil's video, the one that she put out and then she retracted. By the way, how long was that up before she retracted it? Do you know?
I mean, maybe like a couple out, like maybe 2 hours, and then once it started circulating, once I like started sharing it, and other content creators started like and I'm glad I saved it,
I'm so
and
glad you did.
I'm so glad I saved it because when she deleted, and I believe my understanding is I think she archived it and now has just added it back but limited the comments.
Mm.
But it was just interesting because it's like you can't just delete it and then be like, let me take two. Like the internet doesn't work that way, but it just shows you how she's not internet savvy at all.
That's exactly right, and that's one of the things because I analyzed her video on my channel too, and of course, I was being ridiculous, like eating fake money and stuff, but
Yeah.
I did notice though, like, how she seemed to be lecturing from like a past time, like maybe 15 years ago when people didn't understand the internet or the way clickbait culture works and these types of things. And the explanation that she was giving in her little, her people can watch it on my channel or on your page. The explanation that she was giving, it was like someone from 15 years ago, teaching some high schoolers about the internet. And so when you post stuff that's controversial, you get more views. Really?
And then they have an incentive because they make money. And the way she explained it was like so condescending. I'm like, do you really think people are this stupid? But what I think happened with her specifically was she has her book that came out a couple years ago, which is specifically about content creators, and they're basically grifters is the
Uh-huh.
premise of it.
Okay.
And so I think she gained popularity when that book came out. There was a lot of talk. And I think there was this disdain for influencer culture. And now as content creators, we're kind of lumped into that like disdain for influencers, when the influencer piece, I feel like, they were ragging on these pretty girls that are models on Instagram and posting like the coconut water and buy the coconut water. And like, I get the disdain for that. But I think she gained popularity when people
Trying
were
to
kind of
find it.
fatigued with all of that. And then it
Right.
led to her book deal. And so she was just used to being praised for taking down the influencers. But now, the culture has shifted so much more, and mainstream media is not, it doesn't have the same credibility that it used to have. And now content creators are kind of coming to the forefront of new media, that I think she completely underestimated what the industry has become, which also tells you how out of touch with reality she is.
Yeah, definitely. Were you surprised? And I know some people might say this is petty or this is irrelevant to the point, but were you surprised at the way that she was even presenting herself? Because, I know that like you and I don't always like dress up, but I always think before I do a video, okay, how am I going to be perceived here? And you either accommodate it or you don't. But she was putting that out there knowing that it was going to get a lot of views, and she just looked like, I don't know. Glamour magazine, you're about to put out a video that is probably going to get hundreds of thousands or millions of views, and I just thought it was a little bit underglammed for Glamour.
I
But
think she tries to come at it from this place of like, I don't care. Like
right, right,
I'm
right.
too cool to care about these things. And
Right.
and then I know everyone was like dragging her sweater because they're like, well, she's her
I
eyebrows
know,
and her
I
Walmart
dragged it
sweater, and like
too.
everybody was picking apart, which, because you would think you are a representation of Glamour magazine, that you would have some sort of, glamour incorporated into the personal brand that you're putting out there. But I just think she completely missed the mark in terms of what the audience is even going to like. I don't know. I just think she's so out of touch with reality, and it's because she's so protected by a news agency like Glamour, which, let's be real, if they fire her tomorrow, what does her life become?
Right, right. And I'm so tired of like the straw men that people like these types of critics raise, because she kept saying in this video something to the effect of, and yeah, everybody says that content creators, that they're just doing it because they believe in it, and it's not about the money or it's not about the clicks, but they actually have a monetary incentive. It's like, I don't know anybody who's ever said that we're just out here doing philanthropy. I mean, obviously, we're all
Right.
trying to start a business or run a business or whatever. So, I mean, to me, like, it's these dumb straw men that she raises, and then she's like, "But that's not true."
Yeah, her whole thing about like, and it doesn't matter whether 10 people or 10 million people read my story. I'm like, that's not true, because if 10 people are reading your story and you're putting out these flop stories, you would be fired, especially with the number. I had my friend who's a reporter in mainstream media, but he's somebody that it's at least a little in touch with, reality, and is constantly fighting with his editors to like try and get them to get with the times. But like, he was saying that like, yeah, there are so many cuts that are happening in traditional media right now. It's even more cutthroat
Yes.
at your own companies now, because the layoffs are happening left and right because they're bleeding money. So it is competitive at your own company. It's not just competitive between like The Cut versus Glamour. It's competitive between Stephanie and the girl 3 desks over on who can write a better headline and who can get more traction and who can keep the advertiser dollar money coming in. Because at the end of the day, if the money's not coming in, they can't afford you, and they're going to cut the weakest player. And if your articles are only bringing in 10 views, sorry, Stephanie, you're getting the cut.
Yeah, and just on even a human level, like, I used to teach college English, and I can just say there is a difference between teaching 10 students or teaching, a couple of hundred or whatever. And she can say it doesn't matter to her, but that's part of her underlying anger here, is that she feels like she doesn't have this kind of reach. I don't know, but anyway, I do want to just briefly skim through at least some of the Blake Lively filing, because I know you basically explained to us what was going on and everything. But since I advertised it this way, we're going to look at a little bit of it here. Let me just ask you this: did you find it to be more or less like Ryan Reynolds in sort of strategy and arguments and tone, or was it different?
No, Ryan Reynolds' tone was very aggressive, and like, he is a predator, and that's my opinion, but even if it's not my opinion, it's fact. Like, his tone, he was very aggressive, where I feel like in this case they're kind of just taking more jabs at Baldoni's case, and they probably even had two different versions drafted up, and they're like, let's see how Ryan Reynolds is going to be received, and then we'll determine which of ours we put out there. Because this one, the tone was a bit softer, but it was more of just like how ridiculous Wayfair's arguments are, and how like it doesn't even make sense, and the arguments that they make contradict themselves. And it was just, the tone was a lot lighter, but it was more of like poking fun at the absurdity of Baldoni's arguments.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So what we'll do at least is we'll look here at the introduction, maybe the first several paragraphs, and skim it a bit, because again, I don't have a lot of time, but I want to go over this. So the first out of the gate, here's the first line. And again, y'all, this is Blake Lively's motion to dismiss. We already got Ryan Reynolds's the other day, which was really comical in a lot of ways. It may have made some decent legal arguments. I don't know about that. I thought Candace Owens actually had a good rundown on it, legally speaking, but it was amusing to me. But here's what Blake Lively's team says: the Wayfarer party's vengeful and rambling lawsuit against Blake Lively is a profound abuse of the legal process that has no place in federal court. So they love their adjectives. I've noticed they have their thesauruses out. Vengeful and rambling lawsuit. Says the law prohibits weaponizing defamation lawsuits like this one to retaliate against individuals who have filed legal claims or have publicly spoken out about sexual harassment and retaliation. So this is where we get into like the anti-SLAPP stuff, I would imagine, too. The right to seek legal redress and the right of the press to report on it are sacred principles that are protected by multiple privileges, including the litigation and fair report privileges, which are absolute. Okay, so they're addressing that. And then they say, moreover, by choosing to bring their claims under California law, the Wayfarer parties have voluntarily subjected their entire lawsuit to the sexual harassment privilege in the recently enacted California Civil Code, Section 47.1, which bars retaliatory lawsuits based on public disclosures of sexual harassment and related allegations, including disclosures to the press. So it says, given all these protections, the Wayfarer party's chief complaint that Ms. Lively and others supposedly conspired with the New York Times is barred as a matter of law. She was legally entitled to file her complaint and disclose it to the public.
Yeah, so she's saying, as long as I abuse the law, I can do it. Basically her argument, as long as I can find the loopholes within the law, which again makes sense that the strategy was to file the CRD complaint to get the litigation privilege and then put it in the New York Times to get the press privileges. Like, it all kind of makes sense that this was very strategic in how they did it. And now they're basically just like, yeah, but we didn't do anything illegal.
That seems to be the argument that we're going to be getting. We got it from Ryan Reynolds the other day too, is basically saying, well, so what if I, called him a sexual predator repeatedly and slandered him and stuff, legally, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, there's
That's
definitely,
my opinion. Yeah.
as I've said before, there are two big components to this, and you get this too. There's the legal arena, and then there's also the court of public opinion. And so, the lawyers are going to have one take on things, but public opinion, this stuff does not work. By the way, we got a super chat from Lauren. How do you say the last name? I'm terrible that I don't know. Is it Nedley? let me know. But y'all should check out. It's a great channel and very nice person in real life as well. So thank you so much for that. And we'll have you on soon, because I want to have everybody on this show. Same with Donna. I want to have everybody on this show who is covering this stuff.
Yes.
And so Okay, so this basically, I just want to also let people know when we talk about anti-SLAPP laws, sometimes people who have not been tracking these types of Me Too cases and these defamation claims don't know what that refers to. So it has nothing to do with like actual slapping. Okay, but it refers to these, I think, very extreme laws that have been passed in California and also in New York and other places that basically make it extremely difficult to sue someone for defamation if that person has publicly accused you of some kind of gender-based violation. It could be sexual assault, or it could even just be sexual harassment, right? Even something that's not even necessarily against the law, but you can sue for. And so basically, that's why I mean, Zach, I gotta tell you, one thing that does give me some concern for Team Baldoni is that these lawsuits are in the worst states for anti-SLAPP stuff. Don't they have a lawsuit in New York as well, or was that folded into the California one?
Well, I think right now it looks like the lawsuit is bleeding into both, and so the judge will ultimately determine where the jurisdiction should be, whether that's California or whether that's New York, and that'll ultimately determine which of the claims in the lawsuits are going to end up moving forward.
Yeah, so I know that defamation is not the entirety of what they're alleging too. There's a whole laundry list, as you know, of violations, so to speak, that Team Baldoni is accusing Team Lively Reynolds of. But I just have to say, having seen defamation lawsuits based on claims of sexual harassment and stuff, it's very hard in California and it's very hard in New York. California is the worst. And so, that's why I know it's a completely different situation, but that's why Marilyn Manson ended up dropping his lawsuit, is because it got to a point where it was going to be so expensive. And the judge was basically, she had gutted the entire defamation part out of his claims, even though he had great evidence. So I don't know. Again, Brian Friedman is amazing, and they're suing on a number of things here. But that's the only thing that gives me pause. Now if they were suing in Alabama or something, like Jay-Z is suing his false accuser and also that shady lawyer, he's suing them in Alabama, which doesn't have anti-SLAPP laws, so it's a lot easier to do that there. But anyway, okay. So yeah, they spend a lot of time on this. Let's see. Says that among its many incurable defects, the allegations of Justin Baldoni do not allege a single element of the defamation or false light claims properly, starting with the failure to allege defamatory statements with specificity, instead lumping all plaintiffs' claims together as an impermissible group pleading. So again, it's more of a legal argument about how these things are going to be considered or understood together or individually.
Yeah, they're really playing into the technicalities.
Exactly. Welcome to the frustrating realm of the law here. I see what you mean about the language. It is not as extreme as Ryan Reynolds. Let's look. I see a few things here. So let's look at this paragraph. It says, in lieu of concrete facts, the FAC resorts to imply FAC. What does that stand for? I know that
First amended complaint.
First Amendment complaint. Thank you so much. In lieu of concrete facts, the Baldoni's complaint resorts to implausible conjecture and conspiracy theories to allege that Ms. Lively falsified her allegations. On the one, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say the term conspiracy, like when they say there's no collusion with the press right now, it's just so funny that the term conspiracy theory comes up in the headlines that cover people like you and I that are covering this case. And then it's also part of her argument that Baldoni's side is just full of conspiracy theory. Like, it's just that they're trying to really associate anything Baldoni with conspiracy theory.
Absolutely. And that is one of their tricks. And it's the same thing that I've seen in other cases where in like Depp versus Heard, the Amber Heard supporters would say, oh yeah, you think that Amber Heard had this whole conspiracy with some of her friends to fake this 911 thing, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, it turns out that she actually did. But they love that because it makes us sound crazy. Yeah. I've heard that, and then misogynist. Those are the two terms. Oh, and far right. Far right here. That's what they do. Okay. So continuing on. So it says, on the one hand, the Wayfarer parties insist that Ms. Lively is an immensely powerful Hollywood superstar who, along with her influential husband, wielded power to steal creative control over the film. Okay, you described that very well. Thanks. But on the other hand, they claim she was so powerless that the only way she could have any power was by manufacturing sexual harassment allegations almost a year in advance in a Machiavellian long game. Oh, I love this writing. I really do. But what it's saying to me is bullshit. So they're saying that she can't be a powerful superstar with a powerful husband and then at the same time have had to engage in the Machiavellian shit that she was. No, y'all, that's part of her power is that
Right.
she does this shit. They do this shit. He's done it before. She's done it
Yeah.
before, right?
Yep. It's funny when you get to there's a the next part is rich.
Okay, all right. It says these two concepts contradict each other and therefore cannot coexist. Oh, I feel like we're getting into like a philosophical, term paper now. And therefore cannot coexist, even if these bizarre theories made sense, which they do not. The FAC offers no plausible facts to support the conclusory assertion that Ms. Lively ever subjectively doubted that any of the misconduct she alleged had occurred as she described it, including in the 17-point list that they signed, the disclosures made in January 4th meeting, or her eventual legal complaints. Indeed, despite its narrative fury against her, the original complaint repeatedly and consistently includes facts that demonstrate Ms. Lively's genuine good faith belief that she was mistreated and her appropriate and private efforts to improve the situation for herself and others. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, they also at some point argue that like the 17-point list was originally presented in November 2023, so technically it's beyond the statute of limitations from when they decided to file this lawsuit. And then there's a really yummy part where she talks about hijacking the film. And they're just like, you mean like that doesn't even make sense because you mean to tell us that she inserted herself to do more work and she didn't even get any additional compensation? And the film was so successful because of her additional work, and Wayfair got to cash in on that success, and Lively did not.
Oh man. Wow. Wow. I was looking for that here, but it's probably buried in this somehow.
It's
I
still in the summary, but it may have been in one of the other paragraphs. But it was just, I was like, that's a yummy argument right there.
um
She
wow.
had to do. They argued that she had to do more work. That she was doing more work than what was required of her. So when she's in the editing bay, like that's her doing this, seemingly out of the kindness of her heart. Like I don't know, like what. Like, why would she offer to do more work to benefit Wayfair? Because they got to pocket all the money from the success. They had to mention that the film was so successful because the film was with her edit.
Oh wow. I'm just looking at more of this. This will definitely be a good thing for me to do in a follow-up stream or follow-up conversation, and people should definitely go to your site as well. You're talking about it, but I wanted to ask you just kind of a few things in general here. Let me bring this off the screen. First of all, what kind of stuff, I'm curious, did you cover before you got into Blake Lively and this whole saga? Because I love your work and this is the first time I've been introduced to it. So you do like a lot of other like kind of celebrity kind of stuff?
Yeah, a lot of pop culture, entertainment news, reality TV was kind of a big part of it. But then there was another case with an attorney here in Los Angeles, Tom Girardi. He was involved in a big legal scandal,
I've
where he
kind
was
of heard about
basically,
that.
he would take on these contingency cases, most notable for his relation to the Aaron Brockovich case, and he would have these big settlements for these, victims, and then it seemed he wasn't paying them all the money that they were owed, and so it seemed like he was kind of mixing all the money together, and that was a big scandal because his wife was one of the stars of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, so that was where I kind of really got caught up in the legal side of celebrity scandals because I was like, oh, because I was watching this all play out and the public was very much against her because she's the famous wife and they're like she had to have known, and I was like, he's a rich old man, this is his third wife in Beverly Hills, he's not coming home being like, hey honey, tonight's steak is paid for by the orphans and widows I stole from, like that's just not happening. But the public was so against her, and that's when I was
I
like, no, let me try to understand this deeper. And that's when I started learning how to access and read court documents, and I was following it and interviewing attorneys and talking to reporters and like trying to understand the case. And that's when I kind of got this itch for the law. And so I like very lightly covered the Depp v. Heard stuff only when the trial was happening. I didn't cover it prior to then because I wasn't really familiar with it. And then like the Gwyneth Paltrow trial, that was a really fun case. So I like when there's like legal. Well, right now there's a revenge porn case with Tom Sandoval and Rachel Leviss, who are stars of Vanderpump Rules. That trial's coming up in November. So I like getting deeper into the legal celebrity scandals now. But my background is in more just pop culture, celebrity scandals and news.
Well, you mentioned that you like it when there's a legal aspect, and I think the thing that makes it so interesting is that, first of all, the stakes are higher. Anytime the law in any way enters in, whether we're talking about civil law or criminal law in some cases, the stakes are always higher, more drama. And then also, as I've said before, the legal arena is really one of the few, if any, places that people can go to try to get some semblance of truth still. I mean, yes, people can claim stuff in their their legal filings that might not be true, but at least this is a forum where you can see evidence presented and you know that it's been verified or it's going to be verified or whatever, right? And so I think that what we're seeing right now is just like you described here, this perfect convergence of celebrity and then also the legal arena. It's just really fascinating. So you covered Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard just a little, and I wanted to ask you, how do you see this situation in comparison to that? And do you feel like this is the same trajectory that we're on, basically?
I'm hopeful. I mean, you never know, right? You really never know that when things go to trial, it can be so unpredictable. And I think the more challenging part with Blake and Baldoni versus Depp and Heard is we're not going to have this televised. This isn't going to be broadcast for people to watch the way Depp v. Heard was, where the public could watch it and come to their own conclusions. So a lot of what people are going to get, should this come to trial, is what gets covered by the press and what gets put out in the headlines and in the content creator videos, right? Because we're not going to see this streamed on YouTube. And so that's what's going to make it really challenging, is the narrative. And we've seen Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively really use the press and the media to hack the narrative. And when the narrative is kind of given to them because we're not going to be able to see it with our own eyes, that's what's going to make things really challenging. But listen, if it goes to trial, I'm going to be there in New York. I'm going to be out there in New York covering this. Like, absolutely. There's no way I'm letting this get away.
I think a lot of us will, or a lot of us content creators covering it, which is going to be, and it's good because we can't trust the mainstream media, sadly, to deliver an accurate reporting of what's said and done in the courtroom.
Yeah. But we'll see how this plays out. I mean, it seems like, I think a lot of people went into the Depp v. Heard trial supporting Amber Heard. Because at that point it was so fresh off of Me Too that I think the public overwhelmingly was kind of like, we're supposed to believe women. How would we not? Like, why would she bring
Right.
forth? I mean, and that was the
Right.
argument, right? Why would she go this far if she were lying? And then ultimately, as we saw it play out, it was like, oh, wait, what? And then it was kind of jarring for people because we had just come off of Me Too and Time's Up. Which is just funny because Taylor Lorenz, I was watching her interview with Dave Neal this morning, and she was talking about how that's kind of the agenda with these right-wing creators, is they want to end Me Too. They hated Me Too from the beginning, and they just want to abolish it. And I'm like, actually, no, I think a lot of people wanted to believe in the sentiment of Me Too before it became a PR shtick. And then someone like Amber Heard or even Jussie Smollett, right, where these celebrities were starting to come forth and try to weaponize cultural movements and use that to bolster their image in some way, the same way Amber Heard with her op-ed was, seemingly trying to promote her own personal brand fresh off of Aquaman. And, Jussie Smollett obviously wanted to extend his acting career and break it into a new level. And the way to do that is you turn yourself into the perfect victim, and then the public falls in love with you, and then they want to support you, right? And so it's kind of like what we're seeing with Blake Lively, but it's like, you're 6 years too late. Like, this would have worked 6 years ago, and now we've just become way too savvy. And unfortunately, the people that came before you already screwed this game up, that it's not going to work anymore.
Yes, definitely. The bloom is off the rose on Me Too. And honestly, there were a lot of us that and even a number of us on the right or right of center who were originally rooting for Me Too, because y'all remember the original targets of Me Too were a bunch of lefty supporting Hollywood producers and actors and people like that. And there's no love lost. If you haven't noticed, people, there's no love lost on the right side, on the right wing, for Hollywood or Hollywood culture or Hollywood producers, right? And so, Weinstein was getting taken down and others were getting taken down. And a lot of people on the right, I thought, were cheering it on. But what happens is very soon you start to see all of these bullshit cases. And you're right, Amber Heard that was a watershed moment where a ton of people finally, I think, saw the light when it was demonstrated in a court of law in front of them the extent of this hoax and that this was possible. That not only is it possible for a woman to lie about this stuff, but it's possible for her to carry on a pretty extensive and sophisticated hoax. I think that was the big revelation of the Amber Heard Depp situation, was not just that women lie or can lie about this stuff, but that women are capable of really sort of like movie level deceit here, like a plot from a movie almost, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a big watershed moment. And so, and I get so tired of all this right wing stuff, all these accusations, because yes, politically, I am more right of center, but like I'm extremely pro abortion. You can look at my politics playlist and you can see like multiple videos where I'm just chewing out the right wing and the trads and all that stuff, right? So
Yeah.
it's really, and I don't have children, and I don't have children by choice because that's not personally for me. I'm pursuing a different course in life. So it's just funny to get painted as some like far right, mommy sleuth, whatever. Not there's anything wrong with being a mommy, but mommy sleuth or whatever. It's like totally not me.
But isn't that funny that like you and I think both take offense to the term, not personally, but we both take offense to the term mommy sleuth because it's so disrespectful to women and to
Yes.
mothers. And yet
Yes.
it was coming from, or it was weaponized. I believe the term originally was used by Candace Owens, but it
It
was
was originally
weaponized.
cute and funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But
exactly.
it was weaponized by Glamour magazine that you think should be the biggest champion of all women. And yet here they are, completely discounting these mommy sleuths when it's like, to me, I see the term mommy sleuth and I'm like, one, that's a woman that's raising children, which is a
Right.
big job. And
Right.
two, she's sleuth to me sounds kind of savvy. And three, if she's profiting off of this, she sounds like she's a working mom that's busting her butt off,
Exactly, she's got her shit together. No, that's and that's originally it was like a term of respect from Candace Owens, right? And so it's just, and it's interesting, like these women, like Stephanie McNeil and others, they love to tear other women down for their choices. And as much as I get tired of some of as I put it, trad propaganda from the right, when it's like heavy pressure, oh, you should have 10 kids or whatever. I also like look at like women like Stephanie McNeil, and I think, what business do you have denigrating or talking down to women who have children? I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's just terrible. It's silly. Okay. One more question I want to ask you. What is this I'm hearing about Ryan Reynolds maybe being gay? I think I lost the plot on this somewhere, but I saw Candace Owens' video yesterday, and she was talking about how there was a husband of a woman who's interested in this whole saga, and she got her husband into paying attention, and he analyzed a text from Ryan Reynolds, and he's like, this is not how straight guys talk. And then Candace was like, he's always seemed gay to me, and blah, blah, blah. So you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, so this isn't a new rumor that, Ryan Reynolds is secretly gay or secretly bi. Same thing with Hugh Jackman. So it's not. I think people are not surprised by this budding friendship between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, given these rumors. And then even like when it comes to Hugh Jackman, like I remember one time I was doing a podcast and there was this guy that was telling a whole story about how Hugh Jackman literally like pursued him and was hitting on him. But like it's all kind of, I mean, a lot of actors in Hollywood are secretly gay and they
Right.
have these contracts where they sign up to be, these PR stunts to have an actress that's the wife and whatever. I don't know if that's exactly the case with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. I know Candace is really sold to that theory. I've heard that he may not be the straightest dude. And same thing with like Hugh Jackman. So again, it's funny that they're Deadpool and Wolverine and that they're so close and so friendly, considering they're both big rumors about them being gay. And even right now, I don't think anybody believes that Hugh Jackman is like genuinely hot for Sutton Foster. And we're seeing all these like random paparazzi photos of them making out in a parking lot. Like it's like, what? Like it feels so staged that I'm like, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. Like nothing would surprise me at this point.
Oh man. Well,
But
that
also, speaking of gay, like in the Nice Pull skit that I feel like not a lot of people picked up on, but in the Nice Pull bit, Nice Pull had a very like enlarged bulge, and there was like a joke that was made about Nice Pool's bulge kind of just always being on display, which to me was like, is that because Justin Baldoni like is wearing short shorts and you can see his bulge on display on the set of It Ends With Us? Because it hasn't come up in any allegations that Blake Lively's made in her complaints. But I was like, but why would Ryan Reynolds, like, to me it was just such a strange thing that a straight man would focus on the bulge of another man in this Nice Pool skit, that to me was like, huh?
Interesting. I can't argue with that, dude. I cannot argue with that.
I want
And
Candace Owens to talk about that. Like, let's talk about Nice Pool's bulge and why Ryan Reynolds was obsessed with like letting that be a
hey,
bit where they had a line and everything.
maybe she'll hear this or see this, or maybe one of her people, her staffers, who do some research for her, or whatever, will see it. Candace, just give us a little wink, and you don't even have to name us. You don't have to say our names, but as a little wink to us, bring up the bulge thing. Talk about it.
Yes.
That's funny. Zack, I'm sorry we got to go. Next time, I want to have you on for a lot longer. I do have this kind of bombshell interview in the Marilyn Manson case that this person's over in Paris, and it wasn't scheduling. So anyway, I got to go. But thank you so much to you. Thank you to my mods, to Vanessa and AJ and Rebel Bird and Laura B, and to everybody for joining this stream. It is way too short, but we will do it next time longer. And last thing, please, that you do, go to Zack's channel. It's linked in the description, and I'm going to link it in the comments. Zack Peter, go to his channel and let's get him closer to 100K, please. All right. Yes. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. And thank you, Zack. And now it's not letting me log out. My cursor's stuck. I have like 2 monitors here. Have you ever like lost your cursor? Sometimes, there we go. It's back. All right. Love you all. See you later.